Previously, I thought motivation varied from person to person. Top students like studying and therefore have motivation, while I don't like it and have no motivation. Later, I found that motivation varies from task to task, even though I don't like studying. Then I discovered that motivation varies from situation to situation. I said I didn't want to work, but my boss doubled my salary. And the next day I was the first to arrive, working until midnight. So motivation can be changed. Lack of motivation is not a problem with ourselves, but a misunderstanding of its logic of action, causing resistance. Today, let's talk about how to reshape the brain so that it spontaneously generates motivation according to your will, and can start doing things you should do but don't want to do without hesitation. You can't imagine that many times, the strategies you use to inspire motivation can actually destroy it. Let's first look at 3 particularly easy traps. Relying on material rewards. Read for a while, you reward yourself with a game. Run for a while, you reward yourself with a lazy nap. In the short term, external rewards can indeed increase motivation, but the source of this motivation is not the task itself, but the reward. If one day the reward is cancelled, you will definitely not want to read or run, which is called the overjustification effect. It is when you do something for external rewards, you only want the reward, and the intrinsic motivation will decrease. There was an experiment like this, where psychologists found a group of children who liked to draw, and then randomly divided them into 4 groups to draw. The first group was rewarded with 20 cents, the second group with a Medal of Honor, the third group was praised while drawing, and the fourth group received nothing. A few weeks later, they continued to observe the frequency of the children's spontaneous drawing. The result was that the children who received money had the lowest motivation to draw, while the children who were praised had the highest enthusiasm, which means that under material rewards, liking turned into indifference. From a neuroscience perspective, you like to do something because the thing itself can stimulate the release of dopamine, bringing you pleasure, which is internal reinforcement. Once external rewards are introduced due to the higher level of stimulation, dopamine is associated with rewards and becomes external reinforcement. On the one hand, the brain will weaken the pleasure brought by the event itself, and on the other hand, if there is no reward, the sense of drop will make the brain have a negative feeling about the thing, and the enthusiasm will be greatly reduced. Second, force yourself with willpower. When I was in school, I saw others studying with such enthusiasm and tried to force myself to be enthusiastic as well. I would study from midnight to dawn, but often couldn't even last until midnight, usually cursing myself every day. Eventually, under the abrupt effort, I came to a conclusion. The more I force myself, the more my brain resists, which is an act of resistance against my instinct. It's not only painful but also inefficient. This is because our brains all have stable and energy-saving underlying principles, which can also be said to be lazy. When you force yourself to do something, it not only requires squeezing limited resources to handle new tasks, but also requires an extra portion of energy to convince yourself. Over time, actually not long, there will be internal consumption and resistance. Look, do any great gods have self-discipline that is so bitter? In their hearts, doing difficult things is not because of strong willpower, but because they have turned self-discipline into a habit. Just like brushing our teeth and washing our faces every day, not doing it feels unnatural. Moreover, if you are too harsh on yourself in something, the brain will close the dopamine circuit related to this matter, and you will not feel happy. On the contrary, when the brain realizes that you are torturing yourself, it will release inhibitory neurotransmitter GABA, making you feel down or even in pain. In this way, how can you keep going? 3. Set complex goals. In the past, I always heard that goals could inspire motivation, so I was crazy about stacking buffs. Why do I study? To make my parents happy, to benefit society, to attend a top university, to secure a career and status. I have found both internal and external motivations, but I can't even remember them all, and studying is still in that dead state. I thought about it, and these goals are meaningless to me and can't stimulate me. Moreover, having too many and complex goals can actually counteract motivation. The Academy of Sciences of the United States has published a study that conducted a 10-year longitudinal survey of more than 10,000 freshmen at West Point Military Academy. The results found that those with a single goal develop better than those with multiple goals, which is quite strange, isn't it? But it's true, because the more goals there are, the more the brain tends to think they are unimportant, and complex motivations also compete and weaken each other in the brain, so you only need one internal motivation. However, this goal must be something you truly want to achieve, regardless of how lofty others' goals are. Others can study for the rise of China, and you can also study to chase the top girl in your class. As long as this goal can stimulate you, it is useful to you, otherwise all the talk is just nonsense. The 6 stages of motivation. Have you noticed? The reason you may fall into the trap of motivation is likely because you over-rely on external motivation. Things like rewards, penalties, and goals are rules established outside of what you need to do, and then you use the rules to restrain yourself. In essence, they have little to do with the matter itself, while internal motivation is truly directly related to the event. That is, you do this thing purely because you want to, and you will also have pleasure, a sense of achievement and satisfaction in the process, not subject to any external influence. For example, if you work because your boss pays you, and he doesn't pay you today, you will quit tomorrow. This is external motivation. While if you love playing sports very much, you will play whenever you are free without any reason. This is internal motivation. Of course, most things are not absolutely controlled by external motivation or internal motivation alone, but a stage process known as self-determination theory. This is a motivational process theory about human self-determination behavior proposed by psychologists Edward Deci and Richard Ryan, divided into 6 stages from low to high. If you want to fundamentally improve motivation, the only way is to enhance the level of motivation. The first stage is unregulated. It means you have no intention or purpose for something, and there is no internal or external regulation, resulting in unregulated. In the second stage, external regulation, you may do something because you want to receive rewards or avoid punishment, such as working for money, or you will go hungry if you don't work. The motivation to do things is completely controlled by external factors, so it is external motivation. Stage 3, internal regulation. Self-control through internalization of external rules. The driving force of this stage comes from avoiding anxiety and enhancing self-worth. For example, if someone says I am fat, then I go to the gym every day. But if I haven't lost weight after a month, I will change to other methods. This also belongs to external motivation, because it has little to do with the behavior itself. In the 4th stage, identification adjustment. By this stage, you can consciously evaluate something. In essence, they have little to do with the matter itself, while internal motivation is truly directly related to the event. You may do something because you want to receive rewards or avoid punishment, such as working for money. Once you recognize its value, you will actively do it even if you don't enjoy the process. Many bosses promise pie in the sky just to establish identification conditions, making you feel how valuable your work is, so you accept the 996 work schedule without caring about the salary. Identification adjustment is also an external motivation, but the source of motivation starts to lean towards the internal. Stage 5, integration and regulation. This matter is highly consistent with one's own values, and the external rules are also very similar to the internal motivation, so they can be integrated together. For example, if you think going to bed early and waking up early every day is healthy and it has also formed a habit, it is integration and regulation. Although it is also an external motivation, it is the most autonomous form of external motivation. Stage 6, internal regulation. You genuinely like something from the bottom of your heart, and the thing itself can bring you a sense of joy and satisfaction, so you will do it regardless of whether there is external motivation. Internal regulation is the purest internal motivation, and we can even understand it as theoretically, everyone can reach stage 6, whether it's the addiction to studying for the top students or the addiction to playing games. They all belong to internal regulation. However, it's difficult for us to expect ourselves to reach stage 6 in everything we do. After all, how many people truly enjoy work, studying, or difficult learning tasks? Painless reinforcement of internal motivation. Our goal should be placed in the 5th stage, and then we will discuss 3 methods to make the brain recognize the value of things and make the rules fit the internal motivation. Empowerment of consciousness improves recognition. Everyone can imagine, besides hobbies, what things do you recognize? Is it only when the rewards brought by it are completely consistent with the internal motivation? This is also the ultimate goal of the empowerment. This method was proposed by psychologist Michael Steger. You can take a piece of paper and divide it into 4 columns. The first column writes the people who are important to you or your goals. The second column writes the tasks you should do now but don't want to do, such as studying, working, and exercise. The third column, select a goal from the first column and connect it with the second column. Taking the previous example, you don't want to study, but you like the goddess who is the top student. The fourth column writes the specific situation after completing the task, such as you study harder than him. He will definitely leave a deep impression on you, and he may even frequently ask you for it. In this way, studying becomes meaningful for you, much stronger than listening to your parents nagging about studying hard to get into a good university. dissonance. Let's take the example of learning. If you want to increase your learning motivation, you might tell yourself that you are not good at learning, so you should study hard. But because of this statement, the brain has produced cognitive dissonance. Before you start learning, you have implanted a fact in your brain: I am not good at learning. And the brain wonders why a person who is not good at learning would want to study. This goes against the principles of stability and energy conservation, resulting in not only dissonance and failure. So you should tell yourself, I am a top student, and learning is natural for me. At this point, the brain will feel nothing wrong, and beliefs and behavior will be consistent. You might think you can't deceive the brain, but in fact, the brain is easily deceived. It can't tell the difference between virtual and reality, which is why you can't help but smile when you think about being able to chase after the top student goddess. With cognitive coordination, when you go to learn, the brain will no longer reject it, but will instead establish autonomy, because it feels that this is what you should do. The minimum action creates a sense of competence. When you do anything, your brain weighs the pros and cons. If this matter does not necessarily have benefits, or you are not confident in doing it well, it means you might just waste time and energy costs. Then for the brain, it tends to make you not do it. Of course, you can't blame it either, because in the distant past, the brain's conservatism was used to save lives. But this principle is not very applicable in modern society. The purpose of the minimum action is to let the brain know that it is very simple to be confident in doing this matter. For example, if you want to lose weight, don't strive to run far first, just do one push-up before taking a bath every day. For example, to cultivate the habit of reading, don't force yourself to read a certain number of pages every day. Just flip through 2 pages when you finish eating or before going to bed. Starting from the smallest action, the lower the difficulty, the less resistance, and the more the brain believes you can do it well. Don't underestimate this method. It has many benefits and conforms to psychological principles. First, simple things do not produce psychological stress and burden, so the brain will not hold you back. Second, due to the stability of the brain, once you start, you will not really just do one push-up, just read 2 pages, you will add a little more. Finally, you find that you can actually complete the task in excess every day, and this sense of achievement strengthens your willpower, making it easier to persist. If you have stuck with it to this point, it means that there is a very important point. You have already possessed the wanting motivation. What we have discussed before, including all the methodologies you have read before, actually need to take this as a premise, because only when you have a psychological tendency can you possibly produce internal motivation.